She said, "My friend's jokes aren't that bad. If you're offended, you can just leave." I replied, "Don't mind if I do." I flagged down the waiter, paid for my own burger and beer, and walked out. The sound of her screaming my name in the parking lot when she realized she was stuck with a massive bill and no ride was music to my ears. I own a small, successful construction company. I started it with nothing but a used truck and a set of tools I inherited from my father. Now, 10 years later, I have a crew of 12 guys, a fleet of new trucks, and a reputation for being one of the best custom home builders in the state. I am proud of the life I have built with my own 2 hands. I thought my girlfriend of 3 years, Amanda, was proud of it too. I now know she saw my success not as something to admire, but as a resource to be exploited, and my profession as a source of deep, hidden embarrassment. The truth came out last Saturday night. It was her best friend's birthday, and to celebrate, Amanda had arranged a big group dinner. The reservation was for 8 people. Amanda, me, the birthday girl, and 5 of their other friends, at a ridiculously fancy new restaurant on a remote hilltop overlooking the city. It was one of those places where the menu doesn't have prices, and the water costs more than a gallon of gas. I knew the bill was going to be astronomical. I was happy to pay. I was the highest earner at the table by a country mile, and I've always been generous. I saw it as a way to celebrate someone important to Amanda. I even offered to drive everyone, since my new truck has a large, comfortable crew cab, and getting a rideshare to and from this place was notoriously difficult and expensive. The evening started well enough, but as the expensive cocktails started flowing, the vibe began to shift. The conversation turned to careers, and Amanda's friends, a collection of marketing managers and junior executives, started talking about their office politics and stock options. One of them, a particularly smug guy named Chad, turned to me. "So Mark," he said, a condescending smirk on his face, "still playing with hammers and nails? It must be nice to have such a simple job." I smiled politely. "It's a good living," I said, "and I enjoy building things that last." "Oh, I'm sure," he said with a little laugh. "But don't you ever get tired of being covered in dirt all day? Amanda is always telling us about the mess you track into the apartment." I looked at Amanda. She just giggled and took a sip of her cocktail, avoiding my eyes. That was the first dagger. She was complaining about me, about my work to these people behind my back. The jokes continued, each one a little more pointed than the last. They asked if I needed a dictionary to understand their conversation. They made a crack about my calloused hands. It was a coordinated, systematic attack, designed to establish me as the blue-collar court jester in their sophisticated little court. And through it all, Amanda just sat there, smiling, occasionally adding a little detail to fuel their mockery. The final, fatal blow came when the main courses arrived. Chad was telling a story about a recent business trip to Zurich. "You should come with us next time, Amanda," he said. "We'll leave the handyman here to fix the leaky faucet." The table erupted in laughter, and Amanda, my Amanda, looked at me, her eyes full of a cold, dismissive amusement, and she joined in. I felt a switch flip in my brain. The hurt and anger were there, but they were instantly replaced by a profound, icy calm. I saw the situation with perfect clarity. This wasn't a group of friends having a bit of fun. This was a public humiliation, a ritualistic display of disrespect. And my girlfriend was not just a bystander. She was the ringleader. I must have stopped smiling because the laughter died down and they all looked at me. Amanda's expression hardened. "What's wrong, Mark?" she asked, her voice full of a false, challenging concern. "Can't you take a joke?" "These aren't jokes, Amanda," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "They're insults, and you're letting them happen." She rolled her eyes, a gesture of pure, unadulterated contempt. "Oh, grow up," she said, her voice rising. "They're my friends. This is who they are. If you're so sensitive that you can't take it, the door's right there." She pointed a perfectly manicured finger towards the restaurant's exit. It was an ultimatum, delivered in front of an audience. She was giving me a choice: sit there and accept my role as their punching bag, or leave. She was so confident in her power, so certain that I would never call her bluff, that she didn't even consider the consequences of me actually walking through that door. I looked at her. I looked at her friends, their faces smug and expectant, and I made my choice. "Don't mind if I do," I said. I stood up. The entire table stared at me in stunned silence. I flagged down our waiter, who was passing by. "Excuse me," I said, pulling my wallet out of my pocket. "I'm leaving now." "I'd like to pay for my own meal, please." I had the burger and one beer. The waiter looked confused, glancing at the table of 6 other people. I handed him a $50 bill. "That should cover it, plus a tip for your trouble," I said. "Thank you for the excellent service." Then I took my truck keys from the table, gave Amanda one last unreadable look, and I walked away. I didn't run. I didn't storm out. I just walked, calmly and deliberately, out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. The sound of her starting to scream my name from the restaurant's entrance as I reached my truck was the first note in what was about to be a beautiful symphony of consequences. Update 1. The drive home was the most peaceful 30 minutes of my life. I turned off my phone, rolled down the windows, and just drove. The silence was a balm on the raw wound of the evening's disrespect. When I got back to our apartment, my apartment, as the lease was solely in my name, I didn't wallow. I acted. My first move was to secure my assets. I logged into my online banking and transferred the majority of my savings into a separate account at a different bank, an account Amanda had no knowledge of. I then went through our shared accounts and documented her recent, extravagant spending. It was a clear pattern of a lifestyle being lived far beyond her means, funded entirely by mine. My second move was to begin the logistical process of our separation. I drafted a formal, polite email to our landlord, giving my 30-day notice to terminate the lease. I was already planning my exit. I finally turned my phone back on around midnight. It was a war zone. Dozens of missed calls from Amanda and her friends, a string of voicemails, each more hysterical than the last, and a group chat that had exploded with a level of frantic, entitled rage that was almost poetic. "Mark, where are you? You can't just leave us here." "Dude, not cool. We're stuck here and the bill is insane." "Bear girl, you've ruined my birthday. The restaurant manager is threatening to call the police if we don't pay. Answer your phone. My credit card was declined. They said it was over the limit. We don't have enough to cover this." I read through the messages with a detached sense of amusement. They were stranded in a 5-star restaurant with a 4-figure bill they couldn't pay and no ride home. It was a problem of their own making. I decided to grant them one final, clarifying response. I opened the group chat. "To whom it may concern," I typed. As per Amanda's suggestion, I left. My dinner, which consisted of a $25 burger and an $8 beer, has been paid for. The rest of the bill, which I believe consists of approximately $600 worth of lobster, steak, and high-end cocktails, is your collective responsibility. Amanda, you are correct that your credit card is over the limit. That is because you have spent the last month using it to purchase designer clothes and spa days, all of which I have been paying for. That financial support is now, like me, gone. You are all adults, talented, ambitious professionals, from what I gather. I am confident that you can figure out how to settle your own dinner bill and arrange your own transportation. As Amanda so clearly stated, I was free to leave if I was offended. I was offended. I have left. This is the consequence of you getting exactly what you asked for. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I hit send. Then I exited the group chat, blocked every single one of their numbers, and went to bed. The full story of what happened next came to me a few days later from the one decent person in their group, the birthday girl's boyfriend, who called to apologize for his friend's behavior. He said the scene at the restaurant was a complete and utter nightmare. They were forced to pool all their remaining credit and debit cards, and even had to call one of their parents for a loan over the phone just to cover the bill. The manager was, by all accounts, not amused. Their ordeal didn't end there. Stranded 30 miles from home, with no ride and surge pricing on all the apps, they had to pay an exorbitant amount for 2 cars to get them back to the city. The triumphant birthday celebration had devolved into a humiliating, expensive disaster. When Amanda finally got back to our apartment in the early hours of the morning, she found a single, empty cardboard box in the middle of the living room. On top of it was a note. It read, "You have 29 days. I suggest you start packing." Update 2. The month that followed my departure from the restaurant was a cold, quiet war of attrition. Amanda, faced with the undeniable reality of the lease termination notice and the empty box in the living room, seemed to cycle through every stage of grief. But she skipped the ones involving sadness and went straight to anger and bargaining. She tried the anger route first. She sent a barrage of emails from new addresses, filled with venomous accusations. I was a cruel, petty, and vindictive man. I had planned the whole thing to humiliate her. I was a monster. I created a filter that sent all of her emails directly to a folder labeled "Do Not Read." When the anger didn't work, she switched to bargaining. She started leaving tearful voicemails using her friends' phones. She was sorry. Her friends were sorry. They were just joking. She loved me. She couldn't live without me. We could fix this. It was a masterful performance, but I had already seen behind the curtain. I knew it wasn't me she missed, it was my wallet. I never called back. The real battle was logistical. I had my lawyer draft a formal letter, which was delivered to her by a process server. The letter was a simple, brutal accounting of our separation. It detailed my intention to vacate the apartment at the end of the lease. It also included a comprehensive, itemized list of all the major assets in the apartment: the furniture, the television, the appliances, the art, all of which I had purchased and had the receipts for. The letter gave her two clear options. Option A: she could purchase all of the items from me at a fair, depreciated value. Option B: I would have a professional moving company remove all of my property on the final day of the lease, leaving her in an empty apartment. This letter was a checkmate. It removed her ability to squat in a fully furnished apartment while she figured out her next move. She was living on borrowed time, in a home that was about to be stripped bare. Her final, desperate move was an attempt at financial extortion. She had her lawyer, a guy who was clearly in over his head, send a letter to my lawyer. The letter claimed that she was entitled to a significant financial settlement. It argued that she had made significant, non-monetary contributions to our life together, and that she was a victim of financial abuse because I had cut her off without warning. My lawyer's response was a thing of beauty. He sent back a short, sharp, and utterly devastating letter. It stated that her claims of financial abuse were defamatory and baseless, especially given that my bank statements showed I had been single-handedly funding her lavish lifestyle for 3 years. It pointed out that her non-monetary contributions did not entitle her to my pre-relationship assets or my ongoing income. Then came the masterstroke. The final paragraph of the letter stated that if she chose to pursue this frivolous claim, we would be more than happy to proceed to discovery. During discovery, we would be legally entitled to subpoena all of her friends who were at the dinner. We would depose them under oath about the events of that evening. We would ask them to recount their jokes, their insults, and her final, public ultimatum for me to leave. The letter concluded by saying that we were confident that a judge would be very interested to hear about the circumstances that led to our separation. The threat of having her friends dragged into a legal battle, forced to testify under oath about their own disgusting behavior, was too much for her. Her lawyer called my lawyer the next day and officially withdrew all of their claims. She had lost. Final update. It has been 6 months since I paid for my last burger and beer with Amanda. The divorce from her life is complete, and the final settlement has been more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. On the final day of the lease, I was there with the movers. Amanda was a ghost. All the fight was gone, replaced by a sullen, hollowed-out resentment. She just sat on the floor and watched as my crew, with practiced efficiency, dismantled the life she had taken for granted. The expensive sofa, the big screen TV, the comfortable bed, it was all wrapped up and loaded onto my truck. I was moving it all to my new house, a place I had just closed on, a place that was entirely my own. She was left with her clothes, her personal trinkets, and an empty apartment she had to vacate by 5 o'clock. Her friends, the ones she had tried so hard to impress, were nowhere to be seen. They had all distanced themselves from her after the dinner party disaster. Her social capital, which she valued above all else, was bankrupt. The last I heard, she had to move back in with her parents. The glamorous city life, the fancy dinners, the status she craved, it was all gone. She is working a low-level marketing job, trying to save enough money to get her own place. She is living the very kind of simple, budget-conscious life she used to mock. As for me, my life has never been better. My construction business is booming. My new house is slowly becoming a home, and I have learned a valuable, if painful, lesson about the importance of a solid foundation, not just in the buildings I create, but in the relationships I build. I recently started dating again, Her name is Sarah. She's a teacher. She's kind, she's funny, and she's genuine. The other night I told her the whole story about the dinner party. She listened patiently, and when I was done, she just shook her head and said, "So they mocked you for working with your hands while they were eating a meal paid for by the fruits of that same labor? The hypocrisy is stunning." She gets it. She respects what I do, who I am. Amanda gave me an ultimatum. She pointed to the door and told me to leave if I couldn't handle her world. It was the greatest gift she ever gave me. I walked through that door and left her world behind. And in doing so, I was free to build a new one. A better one, on my own terms. She wanted me to know my place. I just chose to build my own place. A place where respect is the price of admission. And she can't afford the ticket.